Hello and welcome back to Race for the White House, our daily show on US politics where we bring you the latest updates from the most important election in the democratic world in 2024. On today's edition, we're going to cover some extremely important stories, ranging from whether Kamala Harris has made a mistake in her vice presidential pick to former President Donald Trump and his struggle to find rhythm in his presidential campaign. US President Joe Biden had banked on June's presidential debate to turn around a race that was rapidly slipping away from him. And now, with the situation changing, Donald Trump hopes to avoid a similar outcome, as his new Democratic opponent Kamala Harris joins the race, who is also enjoying a current surge in momentum in the polls. ABC News has said it will host the first debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris on 10 September. The network confirmed the showdown in a post on X. After Trump said that he would be open to debating his Democratic rival multiple times before the November election.
With all of that being said, I think it's very important to have debates, and we've agreed with Fox on a date of September 4th. We've agreed with NBC, fairly full agreement, subject to them, on September 10th, and we've agreed with ABC on September 25th. So we have those three dates, and those networks, they're very anxiously awaiting that date and those dates. So we have September 4th, September 10th, and September 25th. We have spoken to the heads of the network, and it's all been confirmed, other than some fairly minor details. Audience, some location, which city would we put it into, but all things that will be settled very easily, I think it'll be very easy.
This sets up the first face-to-face matchup between the rivals in what the polls show is a close race. Harris said in a post on X that she was looking forward to the September 10th debate after Trump finally committed. The network said that the debate will be moderated by World News Tonight anchor and managing editor David Muir and ABC News Live Prime anchor Lindsay Davis. Fox News has proposed a debate between Harris and Trump to take place on September 4th, and NBC News is hoping to have one on September 25th. The former president also wants his vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance to debate Harris's choice, Tim Walz. Well, any debate promises to take on extra importance, with polls showing a tight race between the former president and the current vice president. While Harris has ridden a wave of excitement among Democrats since inheriting the mantle of candidate from Biden, she is yet to appear at a news conference or give an interview to a journalist. Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's new running mate, has become a focus of the US presidential campaign. Walz is the governor of the small state of Minnesota, a former member of the House of Representatives of the United States, and a former high school teacher with a military background. His selection as Harris's vice presidential pick has led to a simple question. In a tight race against Donald Trump, is Walz really the best pick for the job? So let's lay out the debate on Walz that's been going on in America. People who think he's actually a great pick for Kamala Harris for the vice presidency lay out a few reasons why. First, he brings some things to the table that Kamala Harris just doesn't. Harris is a highly educated lawyer from California who comes from a minority background, while Walz is a white former high school teacher and military veteran who hails from and appeals to a very different part of the country than Kamala Harris needs help with. In short, he does what a good vice presidential candidate should. He balances the presidential ticket. Second, and more important, his political brand has caught fire in a way that helps Harris. His brand of Midwestern, folksy, straight-talking energy already has people referring to him as America's dad. It adds something once again that Harris simply doesn't have at this point. Harris believes that her Democratic Party has the Republicans on the run. Ever since her candidacy was announced, Donald Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance have struggled to find their footing in this campaign. Her campaign, which has relied on online virality and star power, needs to sustain its momentum and energy over the next 90 days if Harris wants to beat Trump in the November election. Walz has shown that he can capture and keep attention, which is absolutely key to Harris's campaign. His brand is also one of normalcy and stability, which stands in sharp contrast to Donald Trump's brand of chaos. So that's the positive side of the ledger. But there are also others who think that Harris may not have made the best pick. These experts argue that ultimately the election is a Harris versus Trump fight. Vice presidential picks don't factor too much into who American voters will pick in November. So Walz's positives don't actually become all that decisive for the campaign. But they argue that another candidate like Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro might have been much more decisive as a candidate. He is an enormously popular politician in an enormously important state. Losing Pennsylvania, which is an extremely tight contest between Trump and Harris, would devastate the Harris campaign. Shapiro's contribution as a popular governor in the position of a running mate could have delivered this state, unlike Walz, whose home state of Minnesota isn't as electorally important. But Shapiro, while popular and hugely talented, is also a conventional smooth-talking politician. He doesn't add to the vibe and energy of Harris's campaign in the same way that Walz does. As American commentator Ezra Klein put it, Harris has picked the intangible vibes and energy that Walz could offer her campaign over the tangible benefits that Shapiro offered. As the campaign plays out, we'll know if Harris and her team have made the right call. Shoring up support among the Democratic Party's core voter base will be a major focus of the Harris campaign in this election. And that is especially true when it comes to African American voters, who have typically been extremely loyal Democratic voters for the last 80 years. For example, in the 2020 presidential election, an estimated 87% of black voters cast their ballots for Democratic candidate Joe Biden. But over the last few years, there has been concern that the Democratic Party is losing support among this vital constituency. Earlier in 2024, a poll by Gallup found that just about 66% of black voters say they will support the Democrats. While that sounds like a strong performance, it is a 20% drop from the 2020 presidential election. Other poll numbers were similarly worrying. For example, another 2024 poll found that Biden's advantage over Trump among non-white Americans shrank from a 50-point margin to just around 12 points. The reasons for this are complex. The Democratic Party's support for social welfare programs and civil rights for minority communities ensured their dominance over the Republicans for decades. But now, experts say that politics has changed. A lot of the Democratic Party's support actually comes from older minority voters. These groups experienced major events like the civil rights movement and received the benefits of the Democratic Party's creation of the modern welfare state. Younger voters just haven't lived through those times and therefore have less emotional attachment to the Democratic Party. Democratic positions on abortion rights, environmental policy, and other social issues are also pushing minority voters away. Now, Democrats are also hoping that Kamala Harris can turn this picture around. As an African American herself, Harris could galvanize support among these voters. Two events to rally support among black women and black men were highly successful, and a Reuters Ipsos poll found that 70% of black voters would vote for Harris over Trump. That was up substantially from the 59% support Biden was getting just a few months ago. So it does seem like there is some genuine enthusiasm for Harris. But Kamala Harris also has things in her record that may not appeal to minority voters as much. Her record as a prosecutor in California kick-started her political career, and she pitched herself as smart but tough on crime. But given the African American community's difficult relationship with law enforcement agencies, given historical concerns about racism, her record may not necessarily appeal to black voters. This problem with minority voters extends even to the Hispanic community, which has been leaning more away from the Democratic Party over the last couple of years. Wooing its core voter base will be absolutely key if Harris wants to beat Trump in November. The Microsoft Corporation has recently disclosed that a hacking group tied to the Iranian government attempted to infiltrate the email accounts of US presidential campaign staffers in an effort to gather intelligence ahead of the American election. According to reports, the cyber attackers, believed to be linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, launched a phishing attempt in June using a compromised email address from a former political advisor to target a high-ranking presidential campaign official. Microsoft has identified this group as Mint Sandstorm, which also attempted unsuccessfully to access the account of a former presidential candidate. The specific identities of the targets have not been disclosed in the report. In addition to these direct cyber attacks, Iranian groups have been using artificial intelligence to create and spread online content designed to inflame political tensions. This includes derogatory posts about former President Donald Trump and incendiary commentary on contentious issues like gender reassignment surgery. Struggling in the polls and charged with running a lackluster presidential campaign, Donald Trump faced reporters on Thursday for an hour-long press conference, during which he repeatedly lied and said that nobody was killed during the deadly January 6th insurrection led by his supporters at the Capitol in 2021. Keeping our focus on the former president, Donald Trump, at a press conference he said that President Biden had the right to run for re-election and that the Democratic Party took it away from him. In the same breath, he blasted his new opponent Kamala Harris as the least admired, least respected, and worst vice president in the history of our country. Thank you again for watching Race for the White House with us at India Today Global. We'll see you again on Monday.